All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Joaquin Esquivel. I'm Chair of the State Water Resources Control Board. Today is Tuesday, November 7th. It is 9:34 a.m., and I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'll begin by introducing my fellow board colleagues. Joining us virtually here in a moment will be Vice Chair Doreen Diadamo, and here in person with us is Board Member Laurel Firestone and Board Member Sean McGuire. With us here today will be Eileen Sobek, our Executive Director. Joining us as well as Jonathan Bishop and Eric Oppenheimer, our two Chief Deputies, here as well as Michael Loffer, our Chief Counsel. Our clerk of the board is Courtney Tyler, and assisting her today is Emily McShane. As you can see, we have a hybrid meeting here. It is both being webcast and recorded and here in person. For those of you joining us virtually, you're viewing us through one of two streams, either the YouTube live stream or the Cal EPA live stream. If you intend on commenting on any of today's items, though, you need to be on the Zoom platform. There is a link and instructions on how to do so at the top of today's agenda. And if you're having any challenges getting onto the platform, please do email the clerk of the board at board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov, and she can help you get on the platform. Once you are on there, your camera will be off. You'll be on mute until it's your turn to speak on the item you've indicated. Good morning, everyone here in the room. We're in Sacramento in the Cal EPA building. A few announcements for us here as well. If there happens to be an emergency, please do observe the exits. We'll calmly file out to Cesar Chavez Plaza and await further direction. If you intend on commenting on any of today's items, there is a QR code in the back, or you can speak to the clerk of the board in order to ensure that you're listed for the item. And once you do come up to the microphone, please introduce yourself and any affiliation you have. And importantly, also, please do silence any phones so that we can have an uninterrupted meeting today. With that, we can get on to the board's business here at the start. Would like to first note that item number 4 will actually be continued at a future board meeting. And then here we can get into public forum. How many, don't have my computer up yet, apologize, clerk. Okay, thank you. First commenter will be Natalie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Natalie. On behalf of Leadership Council, I'm here to provide comments regarding the Tulare Lake Subbasin Probationary Hearing Draft Staff Report. While Leadership Council does not work with residents in the Tulare Lake Basin, we'd like to thank and commend the State Water Board SGMA staff for their work on the draft staff report, and in particular, their inclusion of the Human Rights Water, the board's equity resolution initiative, and the disparate impacts, attention to protection of public trust resources, and emphasizing the need and importance of demand reduction. The draft staff report builds on DWR's efficiency by providing additional comments and recommendations regarding the degradation of groundwater quality, land subsidence, and impacts on critical infrastructure, and incorporating the impacts of climate change, the impacts climate change will have on groundwater management. We support the staff report recommendation to designate the basin probationary and recommendations regarding requiring metering and extraction reports. Furthermore, given that this is the first subbasin going through the probationary process, we commend the State Water Board SGMA staff for their attention to ensuring there is a public process that is accessible to everyone. In the subbasin draft staff reports to come, we ask that the State Water Board SGMA staff provide additional analysis regarding how GSAs are conducting public engagement and outreach, on how this is or is not shaping GSP development and implementation. We also urge the board to set the probationary hearing for the 5 other basins as early and quickly as possible. Last, on a personal note, I get to call the city of Lemoore my part-time home, as this is where I support my sister and brother-in-law in raising my godchildren. I want to ensure my nephews and niece never lose access to water in their home and that their water is always potable and safe. Lemoore is a part of the South Fork Kings GSA, and I am concerned that the Tulare Lake Subbasin GSP will not manage groundwater in a way that protects current and future access to groundwater. As such, I support the draft staff report recommendation to designate the subbasin probationary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Escobedo Garcia. Next, I'd like to see if Dawn Lynn is on the platform. Don't believe the person is, and then we'll go then to Leona Harris. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Leona Harris. I'm the new General Manager of North Yuba Water District. Accompanying me here today is Marique Ferney, our Board President. I'm here to respond to comments you've received urging you to deny extending North Yuba's water permits. Due to dissatisfaction with the district's previous board and management, on November 8th, the district's voters elected a new district board of directors. The new board has made many changes, including hiring a new general counsel and special water counsel, settling 4 lawsuits involving the district, repairing the relationships between the district and other agencies, repairing the district's water conveyance infrastructure to improve service and to conserve water, focusing on better water stewardship. The district's new board and administrative staff have been unfairly disparaged at State Water Resource Control Board meetings by a former board member who has moved out of the district, and 2 others who are asking you to participate in a scheme to force the North Yuba Water District out of business so that another water district can acquire North Yuba's assets. The comments and accusations these 3 people have made to support their scheme are wrong and unfounded. Yesterday, I emailed a letter to the State Water Resource Control Board members and your executive manager that describes and discusses all of this in more detail. At your last meeting, you instructed your legal counsel to consult with one of the district's detractors. We ask for the same opportunity, and we request a meeting with your helpful and knowledgeable staff to provide information that will assist this board to make decisions that will affect the North Yuba Water District. As a final matter, we are honestly apologetic that we are forced into this dialogue through the public comment period at your board meetings. It is not the best use of anyone's time. We know that thoughtful and meaningful discussions between North Yuba Water District staff and state board would be extremely productive and produce tangible results. We have nothing to hide and welcome the engagement. Thank you for hearing our comments today.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I appreciate your comments and read your letter. And please do engage with our chief counsel and all staff. The door is always open to all parties. And yes, I appreciate that this is seemingly played out in public comment. And do know that our folks are here to be spoken to as well.
Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. That wraps up our public forum. I appreciate folks that have come forward here to address the board on matters not pending before the board. Next, we can now move into board business. And the first item of board business is consideration of adoption of this October 17th and 18th board meeting minutes.
Move to adopt the minutes.
Second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Board Member McGuire?
Aye.
Board Member Firestone?
Aye.
And Chair Esquivel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Board meeting minutes are adopted. Thank you. Next, we can get to our informational item, which will be current hydrologic conditions and response. And I'd like to call up Mr. Ekdahl.
Good morning, Chair Esquivel, members of the board. My name is Eric Ekdahl, Deputy Director for Division of Water Rights. We have a few short slides to update you on current hydrologic conditions specific to the Scott and Shasta watershed. If we can go to the next slide, please. So primarily want to focus on 4 things: current hydrologic conditions, a brief overview of ongoing and upcoming public engagement and opportunities for the public to provide comments and input, preliminary draft regulations, and a little bit of an overview on the emergency regulation process, just as a overview for those that might be watching or tune in later. Next slide, please. So in the Scott River, as of yesterday at 1:30 p.m., flows were 68.5 CFS. It did rain in the watershed, so even by the time I submitted this PowerPoint, the flows had gone up another 3 or 4 CFS. I think it's in the 70s now. And as a reminder, the flow in the expired regulation was 60 CFS for November. So we are above that in-stream flow target. The Shasta River was at 139 CFS as of 1 p.m. Monday, and the flow in the expired regulation was 125 CFS. We're above that expired target as well. And storage in Dwinelle Reservoir is about 8,300 acre feet as of Friday. And as a comparison, it was about 1,400 acre feet at this time last year. Still significantly improved conditions in Dwinelle, which is a good and helpful thing. Next slide, please. So again, the standard diagram is showing kind of where flows are. You can see the big flows from the winter and spring runoff of this last year. It dived down and did briefly, this is on the Scott, drop below the expired targets in August and early September, but has been slowly coming up since then. We go to the next slide. In the Shasta, you can see a kind of similar pattern, although flows have been pretty consistently higher than the flow targets for the months of October and late September, parts of late September. There are fish in both systems, and I need to refer to my notes to this. As of October 30th, there were 4,800 adult Chinook salmon observed in the Shasta and 993 adult Chinook salmon in the Scott. Again, as a comparison, last year in the Scott didn't really start connecting until December when there was significant precipitation. So on the Scott, very significantly improved numbers when there's flow. Next slide, please. Shifting now to an overview of ongoing and upcoming engagement. We've had a number of meetings both in Siskiyou County and continue to hold them virtually. We've established biweekly meetings with Siskiyou County, biweekly meetings with a multi-agency / interested party work group. It includes tribes and some others. We may have lost the slide. There we go. We held a public workshop on October 6th here in the Cali PA building, where we specifically focused on 4 questions related to groundwater local cooperative solutions, minimum flows, data needs, and kind of an overview of the state of the fishery. On October 30th, we held 3 meetings in total. The first meeting was a focus meeting with the Hmong community related to water supplies and health and human safety, drinking water deliveries, and how curtailments could have or could potentially affect those deliveries in the future. And then later that same day, held 2 public listening sessions related to potential impacts and or observed impacts and effects of the e-regs on the community itself. We had about 150 people for the meeting with the Hmong community and about 100 people at the first listening session, about 50 at the second listening session. Those listening sessions ran from 2 to 4:30 and then from 5:30 to about 7:30 or 8. So there was some long days and some very good comment and dialogue. The listening sessions were not a formal Q&A. It was an opportunity for the public to provide direct input. We did have a court reporter there taking a transcript, and so that is in development. We'll post that to our website when it's available so that the public and the board will be able to review the comments that were made. In total, we had about 50 commenters in total. The majority of them, I would say probably 46, 47 out of the 50 were broadly opposed to new flow regulations, and about 3 were in favor of extending protections to the fisheries this year. 2 quick notes. There's been some accusations that the meeting with the Hmong community was a violation of Open Meetings or Public Meetings Act. And I want to reiterate here that it absolutely was not. There was no violation of the Brown Act, no violation of Bagley-Keene that occurred. And likewise, there's also been rumors that have started that the board staff at that meeting said, please continue to divert for illegal cannabis cultivation. And just wanting to set the record straight that that absolutely did not occur. And if there's questions about it, please contact board staff. We're happy to talk about the nature of what was discussed and issues that arise out of both of those meetings. So with that, we have some additional upcoming engagement planned. We have a virtual meeting on preliminary draft regulations, which I'll talk about on the next slide. That is scheduled for November 14th. And we are working on 2 additional webinars, one related to the Scott Valley Integrated Hydrologic Model and kind of an Agriculture and Water Management 101 series, so the public can learn about the models that we're using and just how agriculture works in both watersheds. Next slide, please. So we did release draft preliminary regulations this morning. I think we're still going through the final details of getting all the notices and the email distributions out, but they are available on our website. And if you haven't gotten that email, you will shortly, and we'll make sure that it's circulated widely and people are made aware of it and the opportunity to take a look at it. We're calling it a preliminary draft. This is an additional step we're taking. It's not required by law for processing an emergency regulation, but we did feel it was important to put a draft version out for the public to review, to provide comments on prior to taking anything formal to the board, which will occur. And I'll run through that timeline in a moment. The public comment period is open now. It will close on November 16th, I believe at noon. We will have a virtual public workshop on November 14th. I think it's from 2 to 4. And again, the information for registering for that and speaking on it is available on our website and will be part of the notice if it hasn't gone out quite yet. Once we have gotten comments in the close of the public written comment period, staff will evaluate the both written and verbal comments that we've received, and where necessary or appropriate, make additional changes to that preliminary draft regulation, which will then be taken to the board for their consideration at a public meeting in December. There will also be an opportunity for the public to comment as part of that board meeting and prior to the board meeting itself. Once or if the board does approve the draft regulations, we then will file with the Office of Administrative Law, and the regulations will go into effect 10 days later. Next slide, please. Wanted to highlight 3 noteworthy changes or differences in the preliminary draft regulations. We have proposed some updates to the minimum human health and safety exception certification. So this has always been part of the e-regs. I think for every e-reg package that we've taken to the board for the last couple of years, there's been an exception where if you need basic human health and safety water, about 55 gallons per person per day, you can file for an exception to the curtailment. And we would continue that process and clarify who can file for that exception, making a pathway for a third party to file if appropriate. Second bullet, additional options for diversions for livestock during the prohibition under limited conditions. That seems kind of opaque or a little bit unclear, but basically what we're talking about is providing additional opportunity for diverting for livestock ponds and running it down canals that may be fairly inefficient when flows are at appropriate levels. So creating additional opportunities to refill livestock ponds, but also then with those leaky ditches, it does result in some amount of groundwater recharge as well. And then third, additional options for groundwater local cooperative solutions. We've received a lot of input from the community about different options and different pathways. And so we do have a number of options there. We could focus on one, we could focus on all 3, but we are specifically seeking input on those options from the public and the broader regulated community. Next slide, please. So again, just a quick note that when we do get the public comments on the preliminary draft, we'll take it, we'll go through another revision process. When we formally release the draft, there is additional material that's submitted with that formal draft release. That includes a notice of proposed rulemaking, which includes the text of the regulation, a digest, which is essentially a document that explains why we've made the decisions or the recommendations in the emergency regulation itself and the scientific justification for it, and a fiscal analysis. To be clear, it's not a full-blown fiscal analysis. It's really under the emergency reg process focused on impacts to state finances. Then there will be a consideration at a board meeting and subsequent submission to the Office of Administrative Law, which we've run through previously. And I believe that's it for this slide. If we go to the next one, that's it in summary. And as always, our web links for people that want to stay informed or subscribe to our email subscription list. I think that's all.
Thanks. I appreciate the abbreviated update here, but around a lot of work that's going on. I know there's a lot of meetings around Scott Shasta. We're having a lot of similar folks around discussions around certainly Sigma and then also the Bay Delta plan. And so I just want to acknowledge and thank, I know a lot of engagement that's going on, but particularly the Scott Shasta engagement where the time present in the community, listening to everyone in the community is just really critical to all of this work, and appreciate just the appropriateness of all that work that has gone on. Looking to fellow board colleagues, if they have any question or comment. We do have one commenter and we can go to them, and like to call up Nathaniel Kane.
Good morning, members of the board. Nathaniel Kane, Environmental Law Foundation on behalf of the Karuk Tribe and Pacific Coast Federation of Fishermen's Associations and Institute for Fisheries Resources. Just really quickly, I want to thank Mr. Ekdahl for the presentation. Really look forward to reviewing the draft regs. And I just really want to encourage this board to keep this process moving. The fish numbers and the precip that we've seen is really encouraging, but these Chinook numbers are below average in both these rivers over the last 20 years, and that average is an average of a severely degraded system. So it's great that we have fish this year. You know, it's such an amazing change from the past couple of years, but there's a lot of work to do. And I just want to say that we're going to be engaged. We'll get those comments in next week, and we're looking forward to moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Appreciate that, Mr. Kane. With that, I think it wraps up our informational item. Thank you, Mr. Ekdahl. Appreciate that. We're going to take, actually, yeah, Vice Chair just joined. We won't take a break necessarily, but I know Board Member Firestone will have to be transitioning out here in a moment. Next, we can move on to then item number 3, which is our public hearing and consideration of adoption of proposed amendments and renewal of the general waste discharge requirements and waiver of waste discharge requirements for discharges of waste associated with cannabis cultivation activities. It's, you know, when you have a title that long, you just have to read it out. It also gives time for people to transition into the panel. So we'll give them that, and thank everyone for this. Good morning. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning, Chair Escobar, Vice Chair Diadamo, and board members. My name is Brian Moore. I'm staff with the Division of Water Quality's Campus Regulatory Unit. Up here, I'm joined by Kevin Porzio, Campus Regulatory Unit Manager, Scott Couch, our Groundwater Protection Section Chief, and Tim Regan with the Office of Chief Counsel. Today, I'll be providing you with a brief presentation on the proposed Cannabis General Order updates. Next slide, please. First, a brief background on the Water Board's cannabis program. The cannabis policy and general order were initially adopted by the State Board in October 2017 and again in February 2019. The cannabis policy describes the overarching water diversion and waste discharge requirements associated with cannabis cultivation activities. The cannabis policy contains criteria for enrollment, water quality protection, and protective measures addressing biological and cultural resources. The Cannabis General Order and Small Irrigation Use Registration are the primary avenues for permitting and implementing the cannabis policy. Cannabis General Order enrollment is required for all commercial cultivation and is administered primarily through the regional water quality control boards and is a requirement for state licensure with the Department of Cannabis Control. Today, staff are not proposing changes to any requirements detailed in the cannabis policy or the small irrigation use registration, but are looking to renew the conditional waiver contained within the Cannabis General Order, make minor clerical changes to the order, and address new legislative requirements created since the adoption of the order in 2019. The updates will be discussed on slide 4. The conditional waiver is set to expire February 5th, 2024. If the conditional waiver is not renewed before the expiration date, approximately 900 cannabis general order enrollees will be in a regulatory limbo for noncompliance with their Department of Cannabis Control licensing requirements. Next slide, please. The cannabis policy explicitly lays out tier and risk determination for the general waste discharge requirement, the WDR, and criteria for the conditional waiver of WDRs, which are incorporated and implemented through the statewide cannabis general order. The general WDR considers total disturbed area tier, along with the slope and proximity to surface water risk, to provide a statewide approach for permitting discharges and threatened discharges of waste from cannabis cultivation and associated activities. The conditional waiver provides criteria for low threat sites, specifically indoor and small outdoor cultivation. Indoor facilities must have a permanent roof, a relatively impermeable floor, and ultimately discharge to a permitted treatment system. Outdoor facilities must have less than 2,000 square feet of disturbed area, no disturbed area on a slope greater or equal to 20%, and they must comply with the riparian setbacks. All enrollees in the cannabis general order, including the conditional waiver, must comply with applicable requirements in the cannabis policy attachment A. Currently, there are approximately 5,000 dischargers enrolled in the cannabis general order, and of those enrollments, about 2,000 are covered by the conditional waiver. Next slide, please. Clerical changes staff are proposing include updates to agency names and citations of the Business and Profession Code after the creation of the California Department of Cannabis Control in 2021, which centralized all cannabis statewide licensing and authority into one agency. Non-clerical changes being proposed include updates to finding 17D, shown in the change sheet for this agenda item. This adds proposed language that the conditional waiver was renewed on today's date, November 7th, 2023, and will expire in 5 years. And the addition of finding 51, which addresses Assembly Bill 2108, which added sections 189.7 and 13149.2 to the Water Code, requiring an analysis related to environmental justice, tribal communities, and disadvantaged communities. However, staff found that the item for consideration today will not result in any additional water quality impacts in disadvantaged and tribal communities. The cannabis program did still do broad outreach and targeted noticing to interested parties, and we'll discuss that on the next slide. Next slide, please. Outreach efforts included on April 27th, 2023, a pre-notice was sent to statewide tribal contacts that the general order would be open for public comment around July 11th, 2023. A notice of public comment and board meeting hearing date sent to over 1,500 interested parties, including the Office of Public Participation's external contact list and tribal government contacts provided by the state board tribal liaison and state water board cannabis cultivators email subscription list. On August 7th, 2023, a post was made on social media to our over 1,200 subscribers. Ultimately, staff received one public comment related to the requirements for indoor cultivation, but it was outside the scope of the proposed updates. Additionally, the notice of public comment posted on the state board's documents for public comment page were translated into Spanish and Hmong. The program's webpage was also includes links in Spanish and Hmong to language translation services, including a language access form in 6 different languages. Next slide, please. Our next steps include continuing to enroll dischargers in the Cannabis General Order conditional waiver as an avenue for compliance into the California legal cultivation market. The cannabis policy will be brought back before the board in late 2025 or 2026. Updates to include new in-stream flow requirements. Staff continue to review existing requirements and will make revisions as necessary. And staff will consider changes requested by interested parties. Staff continue to work on creating an open dialogue about upcoming changes and to increase meaningful civic engagement, and will coordinate as early as possible with community partners and tribal governments as specific potential changes are identified. We will prioritize outreach in areas overlapping with high enrollment concentrations in disadvantaged communities. And we will use Cal EnviroScreen's linguistic isolation tool to target non-English speaking communities impacted by the proposed future updates. Outreach will include information on how members of the community can be involved in the process, interpretation resources available, and staff will utilize interpretation resources during both virtual and in-person outreach events. And staff will ensure written materials are available in multiple languages, and those materials have additional information on other available translation services. Next slide, please. Just thank you for your time and consideration today. Do you have any questions for our team?
No questions off the bat from me. Looking to my fellow board colleagues here in a moment, but just want to say thanks. The work here in the cannabis regulatory program, I know, since my coming to the board here has certainly continued to evolve and has been a place of a lot of innovation when it comes to the permitting work. Quickly here, creating a whole new permitting system for a sector of California's economy here that was still developing truly. And so just thanks. I know these are largely conforming changes. There may be larger changes that folks want or have ideas around the program, and appreciate your openness and again the open door and dialogue for what those and timing here, what more greater changes within the program may be. So just thanks. I appreciate the work here amongst it, and just seeing if my colleagues have any questions or comment. Board Member McGuire.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually no questions for me today, but I do also want to say thanks. And I can't believe it's been 5 years. And I'm looking at some familiar faces here. And yeah, I have a little bit of a history having been involved with this, the origin of the cannabis general order when I worked in staff. So it's good to see how much progress has been made and the success of this program over the past 5 years. So thank you for your commitment and diligence in moving this forward. Listening to stakeholders and just your willingness to think about changes, improvements to the policy that may be warranted in the coming years. So thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Board Member. Vice Chair? If not, it's okay. Yeah. Okay, no questions. Thank you, Vice Chair. We do have one commenter. Are they on the platform? Okay, great. Then I'd like to call up Joey Espinoza.
Good morning. My name is Joey Espinosa, and I've been working in cannabis compliance for the past 7 years. And I just wanted to provide a comment. I understand that this is moving forward, and I appreciate the slide that stated there could be changes coming in 2025 or 2026. One of the changes I hope to see is something to address the greenhouse cultivators. It seems that the general order is more focused on indoor or outdoor, and I think we need to find something in between. One particular issue is the restriction on hand watering in a nursery setting, which is it's often impractical for a greenhouse cultivator to hand water. For instance, when you're dealing with freshly propagated cuttings in a tray containing 50 or more small plants, utilizing drip irrigation is nearly impossible. The confined space with plants crammed together in a small area renders the method ineffective. So I just would look forward to these stakeholder meetings in the future and appreciate the board's willingness to work with us on these things, because I think we could continue to develop the program and make it much better for everyone involved. So thanks everyone for their work on this, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Likewise, Joey, appreciate those comments and the engagement here on the program. I agree. I think there's an opportunity to improve, and to board members' point, 5 years isn't necessarily a long time here, and at the time to improve here will be soon amongst it. So thank you. I appreciate it. Looking to see if there's anything further, and if not, I think I entertain a motion.
Nothing further from me. I will move to adopt the order under item 3.
Along with the change sheet?
Along with the change sheet number 1.
Oh, Vice Chair, I apologize, you're on mute.
Okay, second.
Thank you. Ms. Tyler, can you please call the roll call vote?
Board Member McGuire?
Aye.
Vice Chair Diadamo?
Aye.
And Board Member Esquivel?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Chair Esquivel.
Thank you. Aye. The motion carries and the item is adopted. Thanks for, again, the good work and looking forward to what I know is going to be further discussion on the program for sure. So thank you. Let's keep moving along. That brings, as I noted at the top of the agenda, item number 4 will be heard at a future board meeting, which brings us to item number 5. And we'd like to invite up the Central Valley Regional Water Board. And this item is regarding Southern Lost Hills Oil Field Dedesignation, though tempted to also read the title. Good morning. Good morning. If you might need to push the button there at the
There
base.
it is. It
There
looked
we
like
are.
it was lit, but I wasn't sure. So,
Okay. Good morning. Good to see you.
good morning. Good morning, Board Chair Esquivel and members of the board. My name is Alex Olson, and I am a supervising engineering geologist in the Central Valley Water Board's Fresno office. Today, I will be presenting on a proposal to approve a Central Valley Water Board adopted Basin Plan Amendment to the Water Quality Control Plan for the Tulare Lake Basin to remove the municipal and domestic supply, MUN, and agricultural supply, AGR, beneficial uses from groundwater in a horizontally and vertically delineated portion in the southern area of the Lost Hills oil field. This was Central Valley Water Board Resolution R5 2022-0035. Next slide, please. As shown in this project location map, the project area is located in the Tulare Lake Basin within the administrative boundaries of the Lost Hills oil field, located about 75 miles south of the city of Fresno. Next slide, please. This Basin Plan Amendment proposes to justify the removal of the MUN beneficial use for the project area based on existing groundwater quality and geology, which supports a finding that exception 1A of the State Water Resources Control Board Sources of Drinking Water Policy and the Tulare Lake Basin Plan apply. Exception 1A allows a regional board to de-designate the MUN beneficial use in areas where groundwater salinity exceeds total dissolved solids, or TDS, of 3,000 milligrams per liter, and where groundwater is not supplying or anticipated to supply a public water system. The Tulare Lake Basin Plan also allows for removal of the AGR beneficial use if the water cannot support the agricultural use due to natural conditions, but it does not include a numeric objective. The Central Valley Water Board justified the removal of the AGR beneficial use from this area based on a study conducted by the Central Valley Salinity Alternatives for Long-Term Sustainability, or CV salts. This study evaluated salinity impacts on agricultural supply and identified an AGR stock watering threshold criterion of greater than 5,000 milligrams per liter TDS from a guideline from the National Research Council of the National Academy of Science. Both boundaries for MUN and AGR de-designation zones are the same boundary due to the existing groundwater quality in the proposed zone being greater than 10,000 milligrams per liter TDS, significantly exceeding both de-designation salinity threshold criteria. Next slide, please. The project area is located within the southern portion of the Lost Hills oil field in an area that is completely within the boundaries of the oil field. The project area covers 6 square miles. The primary land use for this area is oil production, and there are no towns or communities included in this area. Next slide, please. The evaluation study focused on MUN and AGR beneficial uses of groundwater, specifically groundwater within the lower Tulare member of the Tulare Formation and the Echegoin Formation, where the depths vary from an upper boundary of approximately 600 feet below ground surface at the shallowest to a lower boundary of approximately 6,000 feet at the deepest. The groundwater within the project area is under confined conditions with the mid-Tulare Shale located above the upper boundary of the lower Tulare member, preventing upward migration of groundwater from within this zone, and multiple clay layers within the lower portion of the Echegoin Formation, the lower boundary, to prevent downward migration of groundwater. The existing groundwater has high salinity, greater than 10,000 milligrams per liter TDS, and in many areas is between 30,000 and 40,000 milligrams per liter TDS. The groundwater is not considered an underground source of drinking water under federal regulations. Next slide, please. This white arrow bar represents salinity levels ranging from freshwater to seawater. The salinity increases from left to right on the white arrow bar, and all numbers are in milligrams per liter of TDS. At the leftmost side of the white arrow bar is fresh water. The salinity increases to the right-hand side of the white arrow bar, ending at seawater, which is approximately 35,000 to 40,000 milligrams per liter TDS. Salt-sensitive crops, such as beans and strawberries, are affected by salinity starting around 500 milligrams per liter TDS. The threshold for the maximum salinity allowed for drinking water is 3,000 milligrams per liter TDS. However, there are also secondary maximum contaminant levels for TDS for drinking water, which are consumer acceptance levels. For these levels, it is recommended that drinking water supplied to the public by a community water system does not exceed 500 milligrams per liter TDS, but is acceptable up to 1,000 milligrams per liter TDS. The threshold for the salinity allowed for stock watering is 5,000 milligrams per liter TDS. The existing groundwater in the proposed de-designation area of the Basin Plan Amendment has salinity ranging from greater than 10,000 milligrams per liter to 40,000 milligrams per liter TDS. Next slide, please. An aquifer exemption is a federal process to exempt a potential underground source of drinking water from coverage under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Oilfield administrative boundaries and aquifer exemptions are managed by CalGEM, which stands for the California Geologic Energy Management Division, a division of the California Department of Conservation. A Basin Plan Amendment is a California state process under the Porter-Cologne Act to remove or de-designate an assigned beneficial use from a regional water quality control board's basin plan. A Basin Plan Amendment is approved by the State Water Board and the Office of Administrative Law. Aquifer exemptions and Basin Plan beneficial use de-designations are applied separately to an area with separate criteria and processes. Therefore, an area can have one without the other, and one does not necessitate the other. The purpose of this map is to show the location of the aquifer exemptions adjacent to the BPA project area. The aquifer exemptions are shown with either purple striped areas or solid pastel areas on the map. The approximate location of the proposed Basin Plan Amendment de-designation area is shown by the red outline box. The administrative boundary of the Lost Hills oil field is shown with the light orange outline with an arrow from the orange text box pointing to it. Oil field administrative boundaries, other than those for the Lost Hills oil field, are also shown on this map with orange outlines, but are not labeled. Next slide, please. This Basin Plan Amendment was adopted unanimously by the Central Valley Water Board on June 10, 2022, with Resolution R5 2022-0035. Additionally, an executive officer's non-substantive corrections memorandum dated August 11, 2023, was sent to the State Water Board, making minor editorial corrections. Next slide, please. AB 2108 is a bill that went into effect January 1st, 2023, and which requires focused outreach to disadvantaged communities adjacent to project areas with potential water quality impacts. Although no impacts were anticipated for the community of Lost Hills from this basin plan amendment, outreach to comply with AB 2108 was nevertheless conducted to inform community members. On September 9th, 2023, Central Valley Water Board staff posted the notice for the State Water Board meeting, as well as a 12-page project information sheet about the basin plan amendment in both English and Spanish to 4 highly visible areas in the community of Lost Hills. The 4 posting locations are shown on the map with red stars and labels for each location. Outreach occurred in Lost Hills because it is the only disadvantaged community near the basin plan amendment project area. During the posting efforts, staff received expressions of appreciation for the outreach from community members in Lost Hills. Staff did not receive any public comments or inquiries as a result of this outreach. Next slide, please. A public comment period on the basin plan amendment for this State Water Board approval consideration was held from September 13th through October 15th, 2022. During the 30-day public comment period, comments were received from Sentinel Peak Resources, LLC, and Valley Water Management Company, Valley Water, both in support of the basin plan amendment. However, Valley Water had concerns about findings in the Central Valley Water Board basin plan amendment resolution, the de-designation process for future basin plan amendments, as well as the AGR de-designation threshold used for this basin plan amendment, potentially setting a precedent for use in other future groundwater de-designation basin plan amendments. Next slide, please. Valley Water's first comment was regarding a finding in the basin plan amendment resolution and commented that Central Valley Water Board Resolution 8998 did not fully incorporate State Water Board Resolution 8863, the sources of drinking water policy, into the Tulare Lake Basin Plan. Staff's response is that Central Valley Water Board Resolution 8998 is consistent with State Water Board Resolution 8863, and it did not need to be identical to 8863 to be sufficiently incorporated into the Tulare Lake Basin Plan. Additionally, State Water Board Resolution 8975, which approved Central Valley Water Board Resolution 8998, confirms this. Next slide, please. Valley Water's second comment was also in regards to findings in basin plan amendment in the basin plan amendment resolution, and commented that State Water Board Resolution 8863 was overturned by the Office of Administrative Law, or OAL. Staff's response is that while State Board Resolution 8863 was not approved or overturned by OAL, due to a 1992 California legislation, Resolution 8863 does not need OAL approval. This was also confirmed by a California Court of Appeals decision. Next slide, please. For their third comment, Valley Water commented that the stock watering threshold of 5,000 milligrams per liter of TDS in the basin plan amendment will be used as a default standard maximum TDS limit for AGR de-designations in future basin plan amendments, regardless of whether stock watering is in actual use, and that such a standard is premature in the light of ongoing CV salts implementation. Staff's response is that State Water Board reviews each basin plan amendment individually, and the use of this threshold for this specific basin plan amendment does not set a precedent for its use in future de-designation basin plan amendments. Additionally, it is appropriate to take into consideration not only existing agricultural uses, but also the potential agricultural uses that may be protected by the AGR designation. Furthermore, future information that comes from implementation of CV salts will likely be considered in future basin plan amendments. Next slide, please. For their fourth comment, Valley Water commented that all vertical layers of groundwater should be de-designated wherever possible for a de-designation project to avoid future duplication of effort. Staff response is that State Water Board reviews each basin plan amendment individually to assess the appropriate scope of the de-designation. The scope of the de-designation, subject to the State Water Board's approval for this basin plan amendment, is the scope of the de-designation approved by the Central Valley Water Board. Next slide, please. As such.
Sorry, could you go back to that last slide?
Sure.
Just to put a bow on it, I guess. So can you just refresh my memory why the comment was all vertical layers of groundwater should be de-designated? Can you just clarify why all vertical layers of groundwater weren't de-designated, or refresh my memory on that?
For this de-designation proposal, the operators that proposed this put forward the lower Tulare member of the Tulare Formation and the Etchegoin formations. And they do not start, well, they start beneath the mid-Tulare shell, the confining layer in the area, about 600 feet below ground surface and down to 6,000 feet below ground surface at its deepest. So it's a layer down towards the bottom, but not the overlying upper Tulare member of the Tulare Formation that also includes groundwater.
In a practical sense, we didn't have the information to support the de-designation of the upper layers. Now, maybe it could have been de-designated, and if some future operator wanted to take over, and just to get at why kind of my thought as to why that comment was being made, if a future operator wanted to utilize a pond disposal system in that area, they would essentially need to have that use de-designated or that showing be made here. We essentially are not going to go and do that type of groundwater analysis to broaden the scope of the initial proposal is kind of the bottom line. Even if it would facilitate a pond operation by some operator at some point in the future. I don't know if Valley Water was eyeing that as a potential. They have other projects in the area that do utilize pond disposal, and I know that would be convenient for their particular operations. But the fact remains, the proposal was for a smaller de-designation, and we're essentially leaving that scope as the smaller de-designation that we're bringing forward today.
Thank you for that clarification. It helps just to also just be reminded that this was based on the proposal that was made for this de-designation. That's what you were reviewing and considering, and that's what we have here today. So thank you for that.
Staff's recommendation is to approve the Basin Plan Amendment, Central Valley Water Board Resolution R5 2022-0035, to remove MUN and AGR beneficial uses from groundwater in a horizontally and vertically delineated portion in the southern area of the Lost Hills oil field, and forward it to the Office of Administrative Law for approval consideration. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time. I can now take questions or comments regarding this Basin Plan Amendment.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that went into this, and somewhat similar to the board members' question and sort of the genesis of this project. It is something that was brought to us. What comes to mind, and we discussed this during the briefing, is just the larger CV salt strategy, right? Where this sort of activity we may be seeing quite a bit more of as the basin is more actively prioritized for de-designation, if you will, in certain areas to be able to actually manage salinity off into the future. And there's a lot of ifs and a lot of information I know that's being collected now, but this project certainly brought that to mind for me. And knowing that this, again, it was brought to us, it's a smaller designation, but just the flag, I appreciate the good work that's going on in CV salts and around salinity management discussions, which take a backseat, we know, oftentimes to the quantity discussions, but especially in a warming climate, and especially with reduced supplies, especially of groundwater, we see those concentration and then that specter of what do you do with unusable water or how you manage it into the future that really comes forward. So just want to acknowledge the leadership of the region around that. That larger policy discussion comes to mind as these sorts of projects certainly come to mind or come forward to us, and appreciate, the work that is going on there.
Well, thank you. I do think, this isn't certainly the grand architecture for how basin plan amendments will be done in the future, dedesignations will be done in the future, but it is a useful case study as we move forward with projects that could potentially utilize brackish water desalination within the valley. You need a place to put that brine stream. And if we have areas of the valley's aquifers that are not usable for drinking water, not usable for agricultural supply, and we have a robust data set that says, yeah, this is never going to be used for those purposes, maybe we could utilize those areas for brine disposal. So definitely a useful case study, one more kind of stone on the path to figuring out what the grand solution is for the salinization of the valley's water and soils.
You're here. Thank you for that. Board Member McGuire.
Yes, thank you. And that's on my mind as I'm thinking about the future of California's water resources. And so I have just a comment on that is just the opportunities with brackish water desal and our view of it. I know with the water supply strategy from the governor, work's underway to identify areas within the state that may be candidates for brackish water desal. I have no concerns with, I just want to clarify with the item that's on the agenda today, but the general conversation about CV salts, about where there are opportunities, and maybe our view of water resources, groundwater resources that were once considered unusable, may be shifting over time here. So I appreciate that this is a one-time decision based on the facts on these circumstances and not broadly applicable to other situations, because that could be an evolving conversation.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why you saw the regional board hew to fairly conservative estimates about what can and can't be done with the groundwater that's in this portion of the aquifer. So we're talking about groundwater that is, over 10,000, not even within spitting distance of, AGR uses. But we are really kind of cognizant of the fact that the 3,000 threshold for drinking water, maybe there's going to be some discussion about utilizing sources of drinking water that are above that 3,000 threshold in years to come. I think this is a one-off, like you said. It's a useful case study. It's also one of the reasons why we'd like to keep it relatively confined for the time being, and not to say that this is going to be the threshold that we're going to use for all basin plan amendments moving forward. I think we're going to give due consideration to all menu of options that are kind of emerging in the valley right now. And frankly, when you're talking about, and I think the CV salt study that we're doing right now in partnership with the Salinity Coalition, essentially all the dischargers in the South Valley and North Valley combined, really shows that, to make, and I'm sure you realize this full well, but to make brackish desalination, you have to get the right sweet spot for the right level of salinity. You don't want to be investing time and resources to have desalters where the water is barely above the threshold. You want to recycle and concentrate and get to a specific threshold where it becomes economical to purify that water, dispose of the brine stream, and then utilize the water that you've generated from that brackish desalination, whether it's for municipal or additional agricultural supply. But very, very complex, kind of undertaking. We're certainly more than happy to brief you on the progress being made for the modeling efforts and whatnot for the prioritization and optimization study, which is really well underway. But yeah, that's probably beyond the scope of this basin plan amendment, but certainly was in the back of our mind as we were developing this particular amendment, and a couple more in the hopper that we're also thinking about with that in mind.
Appreciate that. And certainly, as we're thinking about technology and innovation and what makes economic sense, that's also an evolving space, thinking about our direct potable reuse regulations that are likely going to be coming before the board soon. It's an exciting time, and there's a lot that we can do. And so just really encouraged by the work that CV Salts is doing on the long-term salinity.
Thank you. And certainly we're continuing to participate in conversations with the GSAs, whether they're facing probationary hearings or not, about the ability to utilize water, to purify water, to store water underground, especially in those white areas of the valley, and what water quality ramifications could happen due to that, due to all those activities. So an exciting time. Certainly the technical challenges abound, Lots of geologists are doing a lot of good work. Lots of engineers are doing a lot of good work in this area, and they'll continue to do so probably for decades to come.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you brought up groundwater sustainability agencies and the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, because that was a question I had for you, if you have a response today, because I did see the memo that was posted along with the agenda item that talks about aquifer exemptions that may be proposed, as well as potential dedesignations. So there is a lot happening in the SIGMA space, as with many other areas right now. So could you, is there an area here where there's an intersection with water quality impairments, what the regional boards decide in terms of designations or exemptions, and how that works with SIGMA?
Yeah, less so with this particular basin plan amendment, but with future basin plan amendments. And kind of one of the reasons why the memo that was circulated basically says very, very tentative, because it's a new box to check off, right? Our staff has to look and have to interact with the groundwater sustainability agencies and talk about what the long-term strategy is for things like, recharge basins, flood mar, dairy mar. If any of those options are feasible within those areas, it raises new water quality concerns that we have to be cognizant of as we proceed with those basin plan amendments. Now, we've been looking at this one for a while, and I think we've managed to say it's not, there's not going to be a groundwater spreading basin on top of this particular area for a variety of reasons. But when you talk about broader basin plan amendments, that is a consideration that needs to be made. And so, my pledge is not to kind of answer all the questions about the future basin plan amendments here, but that is something that we are very cognizant of as we work and develop the prioritization and optimization study. There's a lot of overlap between what we're doing in CV salts and the groundwater sustainability agency's work. And so we'll keep the conversations going as we make those plans.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of interdependence upon these policies and a lot of opportunity because of it to just accelerate them because of their mutual benefit ultimately when we talk about these discussions. So appreciate that, board member.
I have not been able to show up in a single place and talk about groundwater without SIGMA coming up. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a healthy thing for the Valley. But just wanted to note that wherever I go, you talk about groundwater, SIGMA has to show up.
Yeah, and especially because it's not just desalting or activities, but also water recycling generally. It's just a continuum of the salt and nutrient management plan work that up and down the state is really critical to actually managing and securely investing in these sorts of systems. So
it was the 2009 recycled water policy that kicked a lot of this off in a very, very significant way statewide. I know we had some nascent efforts underway, but I do remind people of that. Salt and nutrient management plans and the directive for all of the regional boards to develop their salt and nutrient management plans fundamentally came from recycled water. And, I suppose time is a circle, and here we are back again talking about it, and hopefully getting some rain this year. But we'll see.
Here. Really appreciate that. Vice Chair, anything to add or any questions? We don't have any commenters for this item.
I don't have any questions, but just want to also extend my thanks and really appreciate the discussion, the good discussion that you all just had here on the overlap, the connection between these different policies. Mr. Palupa, I appreciate that now is not necessarily the time in, what's before us today, but just having that touch point, constantly reminding folks to be looking at how these policies interconnect, and just really appreciate your comprehensive thinking over there at the region, between what you're sending to us today and then also CV salts, your role with SIGMA, the prioritization and optimization study, just a lot going on. And so I think it's always helpful for us to get those updates. Thank you.
Here. Thank you, Vice Chair. With that, entertain a motion.
Great. I will move to adopt the resolution under item 5.
Second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Board Member McGuire?
Aye.
Vice Chair Diadamo?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. The vote is unanimous and the resolution is adopted. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the good work amongst you all. Thank you. All right, that concludes item number 5 and now brings us to the last 2 items of today's portion of the board meeting, board member reports and executive director's report. Here quickly, let me pull up my calendar. I don't think I have too much because I was out sick last week. So let's see. I can kick us off on board member reports here. And after our, oh gosh, we had quite a break. 1 second. I forgot. I will first report on the fact that on the week of the 23rd, we had, so one, on the week of the 23rd and 24th, we had our Water Quality Coordinating Committee meeting, and just want to thank all the regional board members that were able to participate here in person. It was a great 2-day discussion. We focused on the Sackett decision with the Supreme Court and impacts to then shrinking jurisdiction on Federal Clean Water Act and what it means then for Port of Cologne and the board's work in protecting water quality, board's work in protecting water quality, and also had a really critical discussion on tribal beneficial uses, and really appreciate the Lahontan region coming, talking about their specific project when it comes to designating by tribal beneficial uses for Mono, which will be here the first water body to really be designated the uses and the regulatory work around it ongoing. So just really appreciated that discussion, really critical one. I know the chairs are all interested in continuing to follow up on how they can continue to accelerate that work at their regional boards of incorporating these tribal beneficial uses that the board adopted as part of our Mercury provisions, as I recall, in 2017. And so just appreciate that work. Then after WQCC, I made my way to the USCPA regional annual conference, tribal conference, and really appreciated that we had a really good showing from our Office of Public Participation, our tribal liaison, both Adriana Renteria and Elizabeth, who's the assistant, and then our 9 regional board tribal liaisons were all largely there, and representatives from our divisions. It was a really good opportunity to listen, to have a space to be able to, the topics that were covered, I appreciated as well, which included the 401 water quality certification and the ability for federally recognized tribes with a land base, which we know really ultimately shrinks down the number of tribes that it's applicable to, but their ability to take on 401 water quality certification work and standard work within their own reservation boundaries. So it was a really great opportunity, really appreciated the conversations we were able to have there. And then would just flag last week, I appreciated, although I was out sick and had to, not had to decommit from in-person events. I still had a virtual event on Friday with UC Merced. There was going to be traveling to the University of California, Merced to talk about water data, talk with some of the students, and also meet with some of the faculty. We kept that faculty component midday, so I participated remotely, and were a ton of great presentations from a lot of great work happening at UC Merced around the water quality, water quantity, water supply related work that we're all here in the midst of. So it was really good to connect. And the common theme there, of course, was data and the continued ability for the data open data that we're providing here from our programs to allow academia and communities to better model, assess, understand the complex ways in which both climate change and all these stressors we're familiar with are unfolding in our communities. So really appreciated still the ability to do that. And that's my summary of reports.
All right, I will go next. So yes, it has been a break here. I too attended the Water Quality Coordinating Committee meeting. Then for those 2 days, the next day, and thank you, Chair Esquivel, for putting that together. I thought it was a really well attended and good engagement across the regional boards. The next day, Wednesday the 25th, I attended the California Association of Sanitation Agencies held a regulators meeting, which had a focus on cross media engagement. So there were regulators, not just from the water boards, from the Central Valley Regional Board, from our staff, but also from Cal Recycle, from the Air Board, and there was participation from Coastkeeper and some NGOs as well. So I thought it was a good, healthy day of discussion about a whole host of topics, ranging from biosolids to nutrients, frankly, and a lot of the focus there under the next steps that we may need to take in the future as it relates to nutrient management. So I thought it was a productive discussion, and I was encouraged by that. The next item I wanted to mention, there have been a lot of workshops going on at the staff level, and I've been participating in as many of those as possible, as my schedule allows. So I have been observing the Bay Delta staff workshops on both modeling and the overview of the plan itself, as well as the Sigma workshop or meeting last week on the Tulare Lake Subbasin probationary discussions. So I've been keeping very busy with attending those meetings and will continue to do so. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but that's okay. Then on Saturday, just a couple days ago, I had the honor of going to Mexicali. We have awarded a $4.3 million grant for the Mexicali Fluye project, which affectionately is being referred to as the New River project, to restore first initially 3 miles of the New River within Mexicali. And so, Chair Esquivel, I believe that was an event you were going to attend that you were unable to. Thank you. It was a great honor to be able to be there, to be a part of that discussion, launching a really encouraging project, I think. Great participation from the local community there, and really encouraged to hear about the work that the Sonoran Institute is engaged in the Colorado River Delta, as well as in numerous states that they work in the watershed overall, and seeing this project hopefully come to fruition here over the next couple of years. So it was a very good experience. Thank you.
Really appreciate that, and the thanks is all mine, truly. And to your point, it is an exciting project because, well, it's the only dollars we really have that we're spending on the other side of the border. And when you have a watershed that originates on the other side of the border going upstream, it's hard for us sometimes to be able to do that. So just want to thank the Sonoran Institute for being a great partner there and being able to be that intermediary where we are, funding things that are really down, helping us downstream, but also really connecting us with our partners across the border. So thank you so much for doing that, truly.
Absolutely.
Vice Chair, any reports?
Yes, I have a few. So I was able to participate in WQCC just remotely, though I had a cold, and just want to comment that I always feel like each year it gets better. This was really good, and I always especially appreciate the updates that we receive from the regional boards. That's really been and continues to be a good learning opportunity for me. On the 19th of October, I went to Lakeport to participate in the listening session on the Clear Lake Hitch, and board member Firestone was also there, and we had a fairly good turnout. There were Supervisor Green was there, representatives from Big Band Pomo Indians, tribal leader was there, and then a number of folks from the agricultural community. And we went quite late. There were a lot of questions, and I think that our staff just did a superb job. Just taking the time to answer the questions. A lot of it was the same questions, maybe asked in a different way, and just being patient and listening to the community and working through their questions. So it's a long way to drive, but well worth the time spent. And then I too, I think like all of us have been following the Bay Delta staff workshops. And then also the Tulare Lake workshop will be going tomorrow as well. And there was one more, but I'm not I'm not finding it. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
It's a lot. It's hard to say that's all. I can't believe it. I just truly appreciate of how busy things are, and to Board Member McGuire's point, there's just a lot of workshops going on. I know we're all doing our best to attend as many as we can and just appreciate, especially the in-person participation that so many of us have been prioritizing. It means a lot. So thank you for that, Vice Chair. That wraps up Board Member reports and brings us to the Executive Director's report. Anything to comment on, Ms. Sobek? Anything? I know it is a lengthy document. There's a lot in there, but thank you as always. And any questions from board members on the report? Board Member McGuire does.
No questions, but I do expect a report from the executive director before the executive director's final report.
We will have plenty of opportunity to make sure and embarrass Eileen. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sobek. That concludes the executive director's report then as well. I don't think we have personnel closed session. No, not necessary today, I think. But
yeah, my recommendation would be, given that we have a bare quorum and with Vice Chair Diadamo remote, that we would go ahead and continue that to the next board meeting. I'll provide an update to the board members electronically.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That then concludes today's tranche of items for today's board meeting. That we will still have items tomorrow. We have, I think, about 3 to get through before I know many of us, I think all of us that will be at the dais will be heading down south to our Sigma community meeting in Hanford. So just appreciate that. So with that, we're adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. And it is, I'd just like to note, before 11 a.m. today. So appreciate that. Hope everyone has a good rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you. We're adjourned until 9:30.